What if intelligence isn't revealed by the arguments people win, but by the arguments they quietly refuse to have? Most of us grow up believing that the smartest person in the room is the one with the quickest response, the strongest evidence, or the sharpest comeback. We admire people who always seem to have the perfect answer. Yet if you pay close attention to those who consistently make thoughtful decisions, build meaningful relationships, and remain emotionally stable under pressure, you'll notice something unexpected. They often speak less during conflict. Sometimes they don't respond at all. They watch conversations unfold, recognize patterns others can't see, and simply choose not to participate. At first, this can look like weakness, avoidance, or even surrender. But beneath that silence is often a calculation so subtle that most people never recognize it. The strange truth is that intelligence doesn't always push people toward debate. In many cases, it quietly pulls them away from it. And once you understand why, you'll never look at arguments the same way again. Most people assume intelligent individuals argue more because they know more. It seems logical. If you possess knowledge, why wouldn't you defend it? Why wouldn't you correct mistakes, expose flawed reasoning, or challenge false beliefs? But psychology reveals a much more complicated reality. Highly intelligent people eventually discover that arguments are rarely contests of facts. They are usually collisions of identity, emotion, and ego disguised as discussions about truth. The moment someone feels that their beliefs are under attack, the brain often shifts from curiosity into self-defense. Instead of evaluating information objectively, it begins protecting the person's existing worldview. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about who is right. It's about who feels safe. Once intelligent people recognize this invisible shift, they begin asking a different question. Not, can I prove my point? But, is this person actually capable of hearing it? This is where emotional regulation quietly separates intelligence from impulsiveness. Neuroscience has shown that when people become emotionally activated, the brain's threat detection systems become more influential while the regions responsible for careful reasoning become less effective. In simple terms, the louder emotions become, the quieter logic becomes. We've all seen it happen. A disagreement at work starts with different opinions but ends with personal insults. A family dinner turns into an old argument that somehow resurfaces every holiday. A harmless comment on social media spirals into hundreds of angry replies from strangers who were never trying to understand each other in the first place. Intelligent people notice this transition early. They recognize the emotional temperature rising long before everyone else does. Instead of adding more fuel, they often step away because they know reasoning rarely survives emotional flooding. This realization becomes even more profound when you consider how the human mind forms beliefs. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman described how much of our thinking happens automatically, driven by fast, intuitive mental shortcuts rather than slow, deliberate analysis. That explains why changing someone's opinion is far more difficult than presenting better evidence. People don't simply collect beliefs like files inside a cabinet. They weave those beliefs into their identity. If someone has spent years defining themselves by a political view, a parenting philosophy, or even a favorite investment strategy, challenging that belief can feel psychologically similar to challenging who they are. The brain responds as though it is protecting the self, not evaluating information. Once intelligent people understand this, they stop confusing disagreement with ignorance. One of the most fascinating psychological traps is confirmation bias, the tendency to notice information that supports existing beliefs while unconsciously ignoring information that challenges them. Imagine two people reading the exact same news article. One walks away believing it confirmed everything they already thought. The other reaches the opposite conclusion with equal confidence. Neither believes they're being irrational. Each genuinely feels the evidence supports them. This isn't simply stubbornness. It's how the brain conserves mental energy by fitting new information into familiar patterns. Intelligent people aren't immune to confirmation bias. In fact, one sign of intelligence is recognizing that you are just as vulnerable to it as everyone else. That awareness creates humility, and humility often sounds surprisingly quiet. Then there's the Dunning-Kruger Effect, one of the most uncomfortable findings in modern psychology. People with limited knowledge in a subject often overestimate their understanding, while people with greater expertise tend to recognize just how much they still don't know. That's why the loudest voice in the room isn't necessarily the most informed. Think about online debates where absolute certainty fills every comment section. Confidence spreads faster than accuracy because certainty is emotionally attractive. Doubt requires effort. Highly intelligent people frequently hesitate before making strong claims because experience has taught them how complex reality usually is. Ironically, this hesitation can make them appear less convincing than someone who knows far less but speaks with unwavering confidence. Over time, another shift begins to happen. Intelligent people become less interested in winning individual arguments and more interested in recognizing patterns across many conversations. They notice the same emotional loops repeating with different people, the same defensive reactions, the same refusal to admit uncertainty, the same conversations ending exactly where they began. Pattern recognition changes behavior because it allows people to predict outcomes before they happen. Imagine watching the opening minutes of a movie you've already seen 10 times. You already know the ending. Would you feel compelled to experience the entire story again? Many intelligent people feel exactly that way during certain arguments. They're not disengaging because they have nothing to say. They're disengaging because they've already seen where the conversation leads. Carl Jung once suggested that everything which irritates us about others can lead us toward understanding ourselves. That observation transforms conflict into something far more interesting than victory or defeat. Instead of asking why someone else refuses to listen, intelligent people often become curious about their own emotional reaction. Why did that comment bother me so much? Why do I suddenly feel the need to prove myself? Why am I seeking validation from someone whose opinion I don't even respect? These questions require metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking while it's happening. It's one of the most sophisticated forms of intelligence because it turns awareness inward instead of constantly projecting it outward. This inward awareness also explains why intelligent people become protective of something most people spend freely without realizing it: cognitive energy. Every difficult conversation consumes attention, emotional regulation, memory, and self-control. These mental resources are limited. After an exhausting argument, have you ever noticed how difficult it becomes to focus on meaningful work or enjoy the rest of your day? That's because the brain has already spent enormous amounts of energy processing conflict. Intelligent people begin treating attention like a valuable currency. They stop investing it in conversations that produce no growth. It's not indifference. It's resource management. They understand that every unnecessary argument quietly steals energy from something that actually matters. Social intelligence adds another layer. Some people assume honesty means expressing every thought exactly as it appears. But emotionally mature individuals recognize that timing, context, and emotional readiness often determine whether truth will be heard at all. Imagine telling a stressed coworker they're making poor decisions in the middle of a crisis. Even if you're correct, the likelihood of meaningful reflection is almost zero. Wait until the pressure has passed, and the same words may suddenly become valuable. Intelligent people don't only evaluate what is true. They evaluate when truth has a chance to be useful. Sometimes silence isn't withholding wisdom. It's waiting for wisdom to have somewhere to land. Perhaps the greatest misconception about silence is that it reflects fear. In reality, silence can represent extraordinary confidence. When someone desperately needs to win every disagreement, they often reveal an invisible dependence on external validation. Their identity depends on being perceived as correct. But when your sense of self becomes stable, proving yourself loses much of its emotional appeal. Viktor Frankl wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. Intelligent people learn to live inside that space. Instead of reacting automatically, they pause. That pause changes everything. It prevents words spoken only to satisfy temporary emotions from creating consequences that last much longer. Of course, this doesn't mean intelligent people never argue. There are moments when speaking up becomes a moral responsibility. Injustice, manipulation, abuse, and deliberate deception should not be met with passive silence. The difference is intention. They don't argue to protect their ego. They argue to protect something larger than themselves. They choose their battles with extraordinary care because they understand that every confrontation carries a psychological cost. The question is never whether an argument can be won. The question is whether winning will actually improve reality. Surprisingly often, the answer is no. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely peaceful instead of triumphant, you may have already experienced this shift. Perhaps someone misunderstood you, accused you unfairly, or insisted on being right despite overwhelming evidence. You realized that continuing the discussion wouldn't create understanding. It would only create exhaustion. In that moment, silence wasn't surrender. It was clarity. You recognized that not every misunderstanding deserves correction, not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every invitation to conflict deserves acceptance. That realization doesn't make life quieter because people stop disagreeing with you. It makes life quieter because you stop believing every disagreement requires your participation. The deepest lesson may be that intelligence has far less to do with possessing the right answers than with recognizing the limits of persuasion itself. Human beings are not purely rational creatures. We are emotional storytellers constantly protecting identities we have spent years constructing. Once you truly understand that, arguments stop looking like battles over truth and start looking like windows into human nature. The smartest people don't remain silent because they have nothing to contribute. They remain silent because they understand that wisdom is measured not only by knowing what to say, but by knowing when words have already reached their limit. Sometimes the highest form of intelligence isn't speaking louder than everyone else. It's recognizing the rare and extraordinary power of walking away before your peace becomes the price of being right.